when we had the cancer scare in the family, it's like everybody became health nuts overnight. So my father had stage 4 lung cancer. That's what finally took his life. There are things that will always be traumatic in someone or someone else's mind, and they may keep that in the back of their mind. It's two choices that person can make. At some point, they're going to say, either this is going to hurt me or it's going to help me. A lot of people say don't dwell on the past, but in this situation, I encourage people to dwell on stuff, the positive side of what you encountered.
2 times a week in the gym?
Yeah, back when I was lifting, yeah, it was twice a week. I mean, twice a day.
I mean, twice a day. What did I say? Twice a week?
Yeah. Yeah.
About habits I aspire to. I'm trying to get to twice a week.
Oh man, I'm trying to just get back to once a day, at least 5 days. But back then I was lifting. I was lifting actually too heavy, and I was just like, it's not good. It wasn't good for me. So I'm just like, I need to cut it back, because now, not saying I'm an old guy, but at my age, I just want to stay chiseled and strong. Not I don't want to be huge anymore. That's not
Yeah.
that's not cool for me.
Trying to get scoliosis.
Yeah, man, I was pretty heavy for a little while when I was lifting. I was like, this is not cool. I don't want to carry this much mass. So
There's a
I'm gonna bring it back down.
There's a comedian that used to tell a joke about he would go to his 24-hour fitness, and he used to always laugh at the people like in there really getting it, and he would say, "Dude, calm down. It's open 24 hours, bro."
And that was the thing. It's just like, I don't know, when we had the cancer scare in the family, it's like everybody became health nuts overnight, because that's what that's what
Yeah.
people do. You change. You have to change immediately. So I don't know. We kind of discussed this before, but for the listening audience and future folks, it was just like, so my father had stage 4 lung cancer. That's what finally took his life. But even before that, there were some things that started to appear and show up.
Mhm.
And I don't know how he actually processed it, or I mean, I know he went to the doctor, I know he took medication, and I know, but as far as his actual internal health and making a constant intentional stride to fix it, I don't know if I don't feel that he did it, fully. And my thing is this: I'm not knocking my old man. He did a lot of things right. He gave me a great example. He worked hard. He showed me how to think outside the box. He was very innovative.
Mhm.
Um, but when he was growing up in Southeast Texas, Kirbyville, Texas, his family was so poor that actually, if there was no food in the house, or there was nothing on the farm that you could actually eat, which is be vegetable or cow or pig, you have to go out and actually hunt it, bring it back, and then go through the process and then eat it. So that was his upbringing, his childhood. So he was used to having to survive.
Right, right.
Uh,
That Boy Scout mentality, that Eagle Scout mentality.
exactly. So when he got older and he started making decent money, he worked at DuPont. He was an electrician by trade. Then when he retired, he was in contract management. But in between that time, he had a janitorial company, and he also had a construction company on the side. So that's how I learned to uh, be clean about my work environment from the
Mhm.
janitorial side, and then also the construction side as far as wiring, dismantling, demolition, sheetrock, roofing, framing, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Uh, and as time went on, when I was in high school, I got into architecture when I was a sophomore in high school. And then it just took off from there. And I was like, I'm done with working with dad. I want to work with other people, because, when I saw that he and I could only get to a certain point of work, and I don't mean that as far as, dollar signs. I meant that as far as the things that we can actually do together. I wanted to explore other options and do other things, and get it to where I knew a whole lot more, instead of just, what was in that small town. So I moved away from Orange, Texas, and I moved out to Dallas. And things just started clicking. I went back to school and finished my schooling here, and things just started to take off. But I guess throughout that whole scenario, that upbringing, I had a lot of great examples, a lot of good things to fall back on. I just try to reflect on what he taught me, what my mother taught me. She was the nurturer. She was I mean, just very laid back and calm lady, sweet as she could be. And I've only heard her in my life raise her voice maybe about 3 or 4 times. That was it.
Yeah, that's a
Ever.
lot like my mother too, man. That's how what I grew up with as far as the mother, just very chill and trying to keep things peaceful, and
Yeah.
super nurturing and loving, and that really helped me a lot. But also at the same time, I think I could have probably used a little bit sterner.
Yeah.
I was a
Yeah.
little bit wild, you know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
could have used a couple more switches to the backside or something like that, like grandma
Oh
used
man.
to.
Oh man. I needed that. My
Yeah.
dad was the enforcer. He was the strict one. She kind of leveled him out a little bit. She at the times when she was like, "Don't be so hard on him that he gives up." At the same time, be hard enough to where he realizes he has to push himself.
Right.
So, there were three of us. I had two older brothers. And I think, throughout the first two, he learned a lot about not only their personalities, but his own. And then he finally got to me. And I think she did the same thing. She learned about a lot about their personalities and her own. And then they finally got to me and kind of had as my brother would say, he said, they had a different formula for you. I was like, well, if that's how you want to call it, that's what you say. But he was like, yeah, it was a different approach for you.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that it worked out the way it did. Um, but at the same time, it's like even now looking at us as adults, there are things that will always be traumatic in someone or someone else's mind. Always. There's always
Yeah.
going to be something they say, "Wow, this didn't go that well," and they may keep that in the back of their mind. And it's two choices that person can make at some point. They're going to say, either this is going to hurt me or it's going to help me. And very seldom do we find people say this is going to push me to get through whatever I have to get through. Because if I made it through this, that, and the other at that age, I can get through this right now at this age.
Hmm.
So it's just a matter of it's like you have to make up your mind to accept, hey, this isn't working the way I want to. What can I do to change it? And then really analyze and look at your formulas and say, okay, what can I do to tweak it, turn it? If I have to rebuild it, worst case scenario, I'll rebuild it. But you have to say to yourself, I have to get past it. And it's about growth, personal growth and development.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like that saying, pain is inevitable and suffering is optional.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
because
know
I
you losing your parents was just, and it
oh
happened
yeah,
close to each other, didn't it?
yeah, 2 years, 2 weeks apart. My dad died in March 30th of 2006, and my mom was April the 15th of 2008.
Oh wow,
So
that's been a little while for you then. I thought it was a little more
yeah,
recent than that.
no, it's been a little while. It has,
Yeah.
uh, but it's like I was saying earlier. Per person, that may feel like yesterday,
Yeah.
depending on who it is. Yeah, chronologically, it's a while ago, but depending on which son or which brother you ask, it's like, oh man, it still feels like yesterday. Or one may say, I'm doing better. You know what I mean? Uh, and another may say, yeah, I just focus on the positive and keep on moving. A lot of people say don't dwell on the past, but in this situation, I encourage people to dwell on stuff, the positive side of what you encountered. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So did both of your parents have a growth mindset, or did they kind of operate more from a place of this is it and I'm satisfied
Oh
mindset?
no, no. It was straight growth. It was always push, push, push. And my dad was extremely he was a perfectionist. He liked stuff to be just so, and that can help you or hurt you as an entrepreneur. So you can try so hard, so long, so whatever, blah blah blah, that you get caught up in details, and then you miss the whole project because you wasted time on something tiny.
Mm.
but it's getting it to where I'm not saying acceptable or mediocre type mindset. I'm saying do the best that you can of your ability within the time frame that you have, and then if things have to be tweaked or adjusted, go back and adjust it. But don't try to get it perfect because it's humanly impossible to be perfect.
Right.
You're not going to get there. At the same time, it's like do to the best of your ability, and then constantly try to improve as you grow on through other projects and other whatever life changes. But it has to be a growing on. It can't just be I'm moving on to this, but have you changed mentally? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was one of the bigger things. It was weird. It was real weird because that's the only time in my life where I felt helpless. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah, so with
it
you
was,
being, you being a successful architect and real estate developer and all of the things that you've done throughout your career, at that point in time, whenever that went down, where were you at
oh,
on on that?
let me tell you, God, it's weird to say that because, and right now, let me just say for the record, I cannot say I'm an architect in a public forum because that you can be fined for that. So I'm a designer, but
Yeah,
I am studying for my license right now, uh,
gotcha.
and getting that done. But that's kind of here nor there. But
Mhm.
I've been in construction architecture for a number of years, 32 to be exact. At that time, when my first parent got ill, and it was obvious they were ill, um, I was working for an architecture firm, and I was driving back and forth to Tyler, Texas, because that's where my father was in the hospital. And I was going back and forth so often, according to my supervisor, or I wasn't even my supervisor. Matter of fact, it was like the VP of operations, I guess. He said that I wasn't producing. And he may have been right. He may have, because I had so much on my mind. And actually I was laid off. And my father he was not gone yet.
Uh-huh.
I was just going back and forth so much every weekend to Tyler. It's only like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. But it was taking a lot out of me. And right before my father died, I got laid off. Now, at the time I was married, at the time, we were in our home and we had bills, we had cars, we had all this other stuff. And then we still had to take care of things for my mother who was still alive and take care of my father who was about to, pass away. So it was a lot. It was a
Yeah,
lot to deal with.
man,
Uh,
that's a whole lot. Holy crap.
yeah, yeah. And
Hmm.
I got through that. Um, he passed away. Um, I found another, place of employment. And I found out not too long after I was there that my mother was sick. And I remember exactly where I was when she told me she was sick. Dad had stage 4 leukemia. I mean, stage 4 lung cancer. My mom called me on the phone. She says, I have leukemia. And I was like, what? I just sat there quiet, didn't say a word. And I'm thinking to myself, so I didn't want to say this, but I'm thinking that I've heard so many negative things about leukemia. Is there a chance of her survival? So I have a friend of mine that works with the hospitals a lot. Another friend of mine that is a nurse. Some other people around, hospital and medical. So I asked. I said, what do you know about leukemia? This is a mature lady that I see as like a mother figure to me. I said, what do you know about leukemia? She'd heard already my mom was sick, and I just kind of sprang this on her because I knew her personality. She wasn't gonna say anything negative, so I just have to read her body language.
Hmm.
And when I said it, her eyes got really big and they started to well up, and she got really quiet. And I said, okay, that's all I need to know. So I started to ask a few more people, and I kept getting the same response. So I started getting myself prepared right then for what was about to happen. And she She passed away quickly after we found out she was only alive for another maybe 2 or 3 months. It's kind of the same way my dad was. When I found out he was sick, 30 days later, he was gone.
Damn.
So that was the weirdest. That's the most helpless I've ever felt in my life, ever. But I was sad, yes. At the same time, I was, I guess, just bent on being successful. And I was like, I'm not gonna let this stop me, because if they were alive and saw me slowing down and becoming sad, they're like, "What are you doing? Don't slow down on my account. Keep going." You know.
Yeah.
I,
So,
I,
on that note, you and I were blessed because we come from a background of growth mindset individuals.
right,
A lot of people aren't that fortunate, you know.
right, right.
So, what would your suggestion be if someone, that was raised kind of in a different type of environment, more kind of worry, more kind of doubt, more kind of fear driven and oriented? What would your advice based on a kind of a growth and development aspect? What would your advice be of one thing that someone could do to get out of that pit that they may be experiencing from that type of loss? What would be a good, from your perspective, what would be a good thing to try to focus on to shift gears and get out of that? Because that's tough.
Yeah, it is. You have to, and this is going to sound really weird or robotic like, but this is what I did. This is what worked for me. And this is what I would tell anyone I met a stranger on the street. You have to actually, have time in which you grieve. You literally have to schedule that and do that. That's not something that's actually recommended to carry with you and bottle up. So you need to get that out. It's just like any other type of waste or pain. It has to be expelled from the body. So it has to get out, number one. Number two, and I'm going to use, I think this is the wrong word to make the right effect, unlearn negative habits that are not conducive to your successful future. So you have to look at yourself and actually be honest with you and say, what habits or thought routines do I need to get rid of? And which ones do I need to pick up? And then do it. It takes time, and it's never ending, but it gets easier as you start the process and practice the process. You become basically in the mastery of fixing you. You'll never be perfect. You'll never master it completely, but you're more open to what you may be doing wrong or what you're not being necessarily successful in, because the thought is the most powerful thing. And
Absolutely.
if your thoughts are wrong, you're not going to be successful. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
No, it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible.
Yeah. It's kind of like someone winning the lotto who's never managed any type of large sum of money. They're going to be broke within, short period of time, months, maybe a year.
Yeah, Hollywood Henderson is a prime example of that.
Love the guy, but yeah. And he won it twice.
Yeah. That's wild.
But as time went on, I think he learned the lesson, and then he wrote a book and became a good author at a later point in life. So he mastered football. He had a couple of hiccups with the lottery thing, but then he came back as an author and did pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
started speaking struggles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man. It's about being honest with self. That those were the two biggest hurdles, I believe, in my life. And I'm gonna tell you where I was mentally. I wanted to. Matter of fact, I just started. Yeah, I had just started my company in 2005, which is the year before my dad died. Just started it. So when he was actually, having these health issues and slowing down, his body was starting to decline, I actually, got my company, started, had the website stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then it was just like a moment when I was like, wow, this is the worst timing.
Mm, yeah. Was that Fellows Inc.?
Yeah. Yeah. That was it.
Hey, going strong.
Oh man. But see, and here's the thing. In that time period, whatever the case may be, it was a lot of things I couldn't focus on. It was like at that moment I was struggling to come to grips with the reality, and then B, how do I continue to work? So that rush of emotion that you never saw coming is upon you.
Mm,
And you're having to deal with that, and then try to get your company in a good state, or just work period. Because that was a weird time. But it's crazy how things will resurface,
mhm.
and how things can come back, and how things can be fixed and undone, and how things can get better. If we think gloom and doom, that's what we receive.
Oh,
But if
100%.
you
Yeah.
but if you think about winning, positivity, you also receive that. I'm a big fan of The Secret, law of attraction, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So when we actually focus on better things in life, better things happen. You know.
Absolutely. And I love how you hear a lot of people say, I don't believe in the law of attraction. Well, it is not a belief system. It's a law that's always working. But
Yeah.
the thing about the secret was cool, but they really left out, the word action is in law of attraction for a reason.
Right.
The secret
Right.
really is more kind of like whatever, you can sit under a tree and think about whatever and it's gonna come. Well, no, 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 no. You gotta visualize it, you gotta see it, you gotta feel it, and then you gotta move.
Walk towards it. Yep.
You gotta go. And the thing about it, what's interesting to me is everything starts with your beingness, like your
Mhm.
emotional state, like where you're at emotionally,
Right.
your beingness, and then based on the way that you're being, like if you're focused on being grateful and like in that vibration of gratitude and appreciation and joy and all of that kind of vibratory state, and then you start doing things, then,
Yeah.
then you have things. So it's like it's really a be do have. But
Right.
what's interesting to me is we're taught in school, do be have. You got to do a bunch of things so you can be something so you can have something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's completely bass backwards, however you want to say
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
Completely,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
So like,
Because in actuality, that we're taught over years that the test comes after the lesson, but in real life, the lesson comes after the test,
uh-huh,
and that's just what it is. You don't, because you're not going to see it always walking towards you. Sometimes it just pops up, and you're just like, oh, I got to take care of this, so I'll do this now. And then later on, you figure out if you did it right or wrong.
uh-huh.
Uh, but we're so used to that, and sometimes we may get depressed about how it was done wrong, how the mistake was made by ourselves. But you can't focus on that. You just got to learn from it and say, okay, what can I do different to hit a home run? You
Yeah,
know?
always make new mistakes.
Yeah, man. It's. But like one of the biggest things I remember about my dad, he didn't believe in sitting still. He was a very religious man. He
Uh-huh.
prayed often, but he worked hard, hard, hard all the time. And only when he got way up there in life, as far as his age, and I don't mean he was extremely old when he passed away, but to do what he used to do and still work the way he was working at that age was possibly a strength. But I remember he used to say, "No, this is my exercise. This is what I consider my activity for the day." So he built his the second house that he moved into when he left Orange. He moved into another house in Beaumont that he built himself. He had a little help here and there, but he built it. And then he flipped that one, and then he moved to Tyler, and he bought one that was already there. But by that time, he'd already made a good little chunk of change off the first house, and he got rid of his. I think he liquidated a couple of his companies. He was doing okay. But one thing he did tell me, he was like, at the time, back in the '60s in Southeast Texas, the stuff that my father had seen and lived through and gone through, it could affect you adversely if you allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me one day, he said, Damon, he worked at DuPont. He said, if I'd applied or looked into or really tried to, I guess, fight to figure out this information, this knowledge about my 401k way back then, he said I would have been a multi-millionaire right now. I was like, what? Wait, huh?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah. He said, but at the time, being an African-American male in Southeast Texas, certain information wasn't as privy to me where I was at DuPont. He said, so therefore I didn't get the opportunity to even read the documentation. I was like, wow. But that told me as I got older, I said, Damon, read as much as you possibly can. Not on the internet either. I mean, hard copies or softbacks, the tangible book.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking the internet. There's some information you can get to quickly on there, but there's so much recorded or written information that's not on there yet that you still need to have books in the library. So I just said to myself, okay, Damon, expand your vocabulary, read as much as possible, learn about laws and learn about corporations, LLC, C Corp, S Corp. I did as much as I could, man. Banking system, financial practices, construction, architecture. I just dove right in.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll never know it all because it's always changing. At the same time, you need to have a firm grip on the knowledge that's available.
Yeah.
That's for any course, any passion, anybody,
So on the real estate side, do you actually own real estate?
I used to have a couple of houses here and there, but I liquidated. And now I'm doing more of the rehab side or new construction side with houses. I'm also doing some commercial properties that have to be, I guess, what is it? A build out, so interior finish out. And I'm also, I want to actually, own an apartment complex at some point in my life. That was my dad's thing, and he owned one when we were younger. And he sold his interest as he got older because he just got tired of managing it. But one thing he always said was, he said, Damon, invest in something that will pay you while you're sleeping.
Absolutely.
And if you fall asleep in death, it's still paying your family. So I was like, yeah, that's pretty deep. And I didn't realize what he was saying fully until I got older. But a lot of the seeds that he sowed within my mind started to actually, blossom and bloom. I was like, okay, that's I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. But that was kind of the thing. When I talked to my mom about certain stuff, I'd ask her something that would be bothering me, and she'd say, and I was a child when this conversation happened. She said, "Be innovative." I was like, "What does that mean?" I have no idea what that word even means. I was a little boy. She said, "Go look it up." So I went and I looked it up. And it said basically you find another way to get the same end result, but you create a method, create a path. So I was like, okay. So from that day forward, we'd always say that between us up until she died. We'd always say, be innovative. And we'd smile when we said it or laugh out loud. But that was kind of our thing, our little inside joke, be innovative. But she and my father and she were always about figuring stuff out. find a way, figure it out, do something that's going to make sense,
Mhm.
and then go forward, plan the attack, and then attack.
Yeah, you're really fortunate that you had that type of information and instilled in you at an early age, because the whole financial piece in investing was never a conversation in my house, like at all.
Really?
Um,
Okay.
my father was started cutting hair in 1967 in Dallas, and started his own salon, and he's always been self-employed. My grandfather was a engineer and contractor, and he was a brick mason by trade, and he created a very successful commercial construction company that they built Nimitz High School in Irving, and had a hand in a lot of stuff in all throughout Dallas, different types of commercial structures. But taking the money and putting it in places to where the money can continue to work and grow was not part of the scenario. So unfortunately, my grandfather, he retired at the age of 50, and he told my
Okay.
grandmother, hey, I'm going to work really hard, I'm going to build this company, and we're going to take this money and we're just going to travel, because she wanted to travel. So that's what they
Right.
did. And whenever he was about to pass away, he told my dad, I've got, I think it was $32,000. I got 32,000 in cash in the trunk of the Cadillac. You and your brother split it.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, so there was never the whole concept of taking some of the money. There's a difference between saving to save and
Right.
saving
To invest.
Yeah. So now, me being 38 and never raised with any of that type of information, not talked about. Money was never talked about
Right.
in the household. You know what I mean? Like, you
Right.
work hard, you make some money, and since my dad was in the hair business, most everything was cash.
Right. Right.
So it was no wonder when I started waiting tables, it's like, okay, you make some cash and you spend it and then you go make it again tomorrow. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, I can spend it and I'll go make it again tomorrow.
Right.
I remember when I was really young, I think I was 10, maybe 9. I was going through my dad's closet. I was snooping. I was always, I was snooping around his closet, and I came across a garment hanging bag. And I opened the zipper, and it was just full of cash, dude.
Wow.
And this was in the late 80s. That was, I don't know how much money was in there. I looked, dude. I was like, what's my dad doing?
Yeah.
Running some type of illegal ring, but
Right.
always just stash. Always just stash. Don't trust the banks.
Yeah.
Don't trust the banks. I get that. But let's figure out how to take a bunch of that cash, a good lump sum of that cash, and put it in a place to where that money can just grow without us touching it.
That's
So
right.
now where I'm at, learning all these things, I recently got an ebook called "What Would the Rockefellers Do?"
Right. I've seen it.
Yeah, and I started reading it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, you mean I can utilize cash flow insurance,
Mm-hmm.
my own internal banking system that I can borrow from through insurance, and I borrow from it, and I'm paying myself back.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have
Yep.
interest. And the whole concept of creating different trusts,
Mm-hmm.
future generations, they have to apply to a board to take loans out, and they can only use it for education or starting businesses or the advancement of the family trust. And they have to pay it back, and it goes right back into the family. And I'm like,
That's right. That's right.
it's exploding. Like, what? You could do that? So now my dad, me and my dad, we have a company together. I shared that with you. And the whole, windows and siding, and it's an exciting time because I've just had to expand to 3 crews from 1, and I'm bringing on a salesperson because I've got too many leads. right now. And so I've
Yeah.
been having conversations with my dad. I'm like, yo, I found out this information, and there's this book, and there's this information, and we gonna do this right, homie.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
gonna do it right, partner, because
Yeah. Yeah.
the money's gonna be great. But I love what Jim Rohn says. It's not about the money. You don't set a goal to become rich because of the money. You do it because of what it will make of you to achieve it.
Right.
The skills that you're going to learn, the things that you have to develop internally in order to even be able to do it. Like the skills that you acquire are going to heavily outweigh the joy of the money.
Right. Oh,
You're
yeah.
going to transform. You're going to transform. Yeah. You're going to just be a more effective person in all areas, spiritual,
Right.
physical, emotional, mental. All those things have to come together for you to even have a success. And I was talking to one of my counselors just a little bit ago, and we were talking about the whole treatment world, and it's got to be deeper than just removing the alcohol and the substance. It's got to be rethinking about things, creating new habits, working on your spiritual health, because it doesn't matter if you're not like balanced. Right. Just removing the substance is not
right.
Good.
Right. Exactly.
That's why most people go to treatment, they end up back in treatment very shortly.
Right.
So I was just having that conversation, and it's got to be a full-scale operation. So
that's right.
It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of work to really put a lot of energy on completely recreating my whole upbringing, if you will. Right. Now, there's a lot of great stuff. My parents were amazing. My granddad was amazing. And, the thing that I was going to say, I remember now, is you were talking about your dad always being active.
Yeah.
Oh, was the same way. He didn't want to sit still because he loves what he does so much.
Yeah.
And now I've fallen in love with it too. But my granddad was the same way. Like I remember, going over to their house when I was a kid. And he lived on the lake, Cedar Creek Lake, and he had a boathouse and he had his workshop. And he was very, very smart. He could freaking invent and build all kinds of things. Just a genius. Yeah. And my grandmother would sit in the house in a rocking chair. She'd watch TV, and sun up to sundown, he'd be in his workshop just building something new. Always wanting to build something. Always wanting to innovate. You know what I mean? And I've got a lot of those skills, a lot of great skills from my dad and my grandfather. And I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I'm able to take all that stuff and now mixing it with even more knowledge on the financial side to be able to, one thing that was in that book that I really enjoyed reading about was, it compares the Vanderbilt family to the Rockefeller family. And the Vanderbilt trusts were set up in a way, all the next generation just had trust funds and they had access to all the money.
Right.
Just squandering money right and left.
But this wasn't intact.
Exactly. Yep. Just squandering the money everywhere. That's why their name's not on the list anymore.
Right.
So it was kind of comparing those two things. And, you had to, with the whole Rockefeller method, if you will, their whole concept was we want all of our future generations to not have to start at zero.
Right.
We want them to be able to have access to the money they need to start a business or continue their schooling or just those things.
Right.
And it was very, instead of, if you want a loan, you got to go to the bank and people have to approve it.
Exactly.
Same concept, but it was a family bank, and that gave me goosebumps, dude.
Yeah.
I love it.
And that in itself is genius because you can almost to a point say you kind of control your destiny.
Yes.
It's not as if you have to get the knot or the lump first and then go after your dream, or going towards your dream, you have to get this type of financing in order to make it happen. The financing is there. The plan is all that was left for them to do. Now, most people cases, what does it say, 76 or 77% of millionaires don't come from money.
Right.
They come from here.
Right.
So they had to actually get it on their own, and then the money followed them.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to develop that plan. And I'm like this. The way that I kind of grew up about it, my father, graduated from high school and stuff like that, but he didn't have a college education. Um, my thing was to get my college education and then pursue my dreams as architecture. And there's a big misconception about architecture that people normally don't know. Architects as a whole don't make a whole bunch of money. They don't. They make average money. Here's the little hook. When you become an owner of your own practice, or if you're a partner in a practice, that's when you begin to make serious money, just like a lawyer would.
Right. Gotcha.
So my thought from a young age, I never wanted to work for anybody. I just didn't like it. And it wasn't because I was arrogant. I thought I knew everything. There were just so many things in here that I wanted to get out here. I knew they were going to have a problem with it. So I said, if I'm by myself and I'm doing it by myself, I'm not going to have a problem with me continuing to grow and try new things and develop this or, create that, blah, blah, blah. Because there's always a better way to do something. It's just about the right person finding it or doing it, creating it.
Now, I know you know this book backward and forward. and I'm since I last talked to you, I just ordered this.
Oh yeah.
Bro,
Yeah.
I'm about to dive in. This thing's beast mode.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I know you know this back and forward, but I love this part, and I have to read it. Anytime I tell somebody about this book, I always love to tell this little story because it's so powerful, man. And it's the chapter on specialized knowledge.
Yeah.
Chapter 5. And I love this right here. And if you guys don't like being read to, I don't even care because I'm gonna jump. It's only a few paragraphs. Bear with me. So this says, many people make the mistake of assuming that because Henry Ford had but little schooling, he is not a man of education. Those who make this mistake do not know Henry Ford, nor do they understand the real meaning of the word educate. That word is derived from the Latin word educo, meaning to educe, to draw out, and to develop from within.
That's right.
An educated man is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. An educated man is one who has so developed the faculties of his mind that he may acquire anything he wants or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. That's important. Oh, all you viewers, don't violate them rights, man. I'm trying to tell you. So Henry Ford comes well within the meaning of this definition. Oh, I love this part. During the World War, a Chicago newspaper published certain editorials in which, among other statements, Henry Ford was called an ignorant pacifist.
Yep.
Mr. Ford objected to the statements, and he brought suit against that paper for libeling him. When the suit was tried in the courts, the attorneys for the paper pleaded justification and placed Mr. Ford himself on the witness stand for the purpose of proving to the jury that he was ignorant. The attorneys asked Mr. Ford a great variety of questions. I'm doing this like a cold read at audition. A great variety of questions. All of them intended to prove by his own evidence that while he might possess considerable specialized knowledge pertaining to the manufacture of automobiles, he was, in the main, ignorant. Mr. Ford was plied with such questions as the following. Who was Benedict Arnold? And how many soldiers did the British send over to America to put down the rebellion of 1776? In answer to the last question, Mr. Ford replied, well, I do not know the exact number of soldiers the British sent over, but I have heard that it was a considerably larger number than ever went back. Finally, Mr. Ford became tired of this line of questioning, and in reply to a particularly offensive question, he leaned over. And this is the magic formula, folks. I want everybody to listen to this.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful for success. So, once again, finally, Mr. Ford became tired of this line of questioning, and in reply to a particularly offensive question, he leaned over, pointed his finger at the lawyer who has asked the question, and said, if I should really want to answer the foolish question you have just asked, or any of the other questions you have been asking me, let me remind you that I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk, and by pushing the right button, I can summon to my aid men who can answer any question I desire to ask concerning the business to which I am devoting most of my efforts. Now, kindly tell me why I should clutter up my mind with general knowledge for the purpose of being able to answer questions when I have men around me who can supply any knowledge I require.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Boom. Delegation. Understanding what needs to be done and finding the right people to do it.
That's all it is. Organized effort.
Yeah, so many entrepreneurs think they gotta know and do everything. I mean, it's very important to at least know a little bit about all of the aspects so you can find the right people to fill those roles. Because you don't finally just start hiring people. You want to know at least a mentor of mine once said, if you really want to be successful, you need to find a way to become genuinely interested in other people, what their habits are, what their likes are, what their interests are. And then if it's a fit, figure out a way to place them strategically into your vision so it moves your vision forward and also plays to their wants and desires.
Yeah.
That was like,
exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Dang.
That is exactly it. It's basically you're putting out an ad, just like a frequency, to say, here's what I'm looking for, and the right people will respond to it. The wrong ones won't say anything.
Absolutely.
It's just the way it works. If you're applying for a job, usually in an interview, you'll be able to tell if that person is somewhat qualified or not at all. Because the things that you're going to talk about, that conversation should flow. It shouldn't ebb and flow or crash. It should just go right across.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the main things I've noticed. You're talking about the Henry Ford incident. I use that all the time when I talk to people, and I say I don't have to know everything. I just have to hire people who are specialized or specified in a particular field. I pay them to know.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah.
But I know what the end goal is supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My situation right now is almost carbon copy of that. I have 2 master architects, 2 engineers, and a whole bunch of construction guys. Mm-hmm. On any given Sunday, they know more than me about their field because it's their field they've been doing forever and a day.
Absolutely.
I know enough about both to figure out the end result that I want. Mm-hmm. So I use what they are shooting for in my plan to make my end result come to life. Mm-hmm. Same thing.
Yeah. And
same thing.
Even in life too, it doesn't even have to be about business. Not everyone, you gotta I love what Gary Vaynerchuk says a lot of the time. Not everyone's a number 1, not everyone's a number 2, not everyone's a number 3. You've got to have the 7s and the 8s, because if you don't have the 7s, the 9s, the 10s, you don't have an economy, you don't have a society, you don't have anything to keep the wheel going.
Gary V, no way. And I'm gonna tell you this, it's crazy. some of your greatest quarterbacks would never have been known if they weren't a second or a third stringer.
That's right.
Joe Montana's one. Tom Brady's one. Heck, Warren Moon was one.
Warren
They
Moon.
all.
What a
Yeah, that's that's
Yeah.
my guy. You know.
yeah.
They all had to. Oh, Houston Oilers. You know, I grew up right by Houston, so that
Wow.
was my team, man, coming up, and
Oh,
you know
wow.
now I'm a Texan and an Astro and a Rocket. You know, but
Yeah.
I guess my thing was, though his team never got the ring, they got close. They got really close. To me, he threw one of the prettiest spirals that I've seen in National Football League ever, and it just it didn't work out in the end.
Mhm.
But at the same time, as far as his knowledge and how he was a QB, I mean, I had nothing but respect for him. I met him a few years ago. Uh,
Where?
that's a big guy.
Really?
Yeah, I met him right here in Dallas. Yeah,
He,
he was at a hotel and he was downstairs, and I walked up to him. I
is
said, "Warren Moon."
he investing? Like, what's his thing these days?
Right now, he's doing that I know of more motivational speeches and stuff like that.
Mhm.
He's real tight with a guy named what's his first name? Meltzer, Dave Meltzer.
I
Do
don't
you know
know.
him? Okay, so Meltzer is with Warren. He and Warren are pretty close, and then Warren is with another group that does, I think, some type of marketing as well too. Uh, but he still does stuff for the NFL as well. Of course, you know he got a nice probably retirement package from those guys. But
Mhm.
he's still. I don't see the effects of the game hitting him as bad. You know what I mean? Some athletes that I've been around and been with, but yeah, Moon was to me he was calculated. He was very smart.
He was magic, man.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
he was fun to
yeah,
watch.
yeah. He's probably about 240, 250 right now.
Wow. I can
He's
like I can see him in my mind's eye, kind of prancing back like a Muhammad Ali. He was like a
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
He was graceful.
you know what I mean? Yeah, he was. He's a lot like Peyton Manning a little bit. I love the way Peyton Manning plays. He's
Yeah,
very point specific on every single little move, and he's like, uh, mm.
yeah, yeah. Warren was graceful, man. He when I when I watched him play as a young guy, because I remember I went to the last Houston Oilers game played in the Astrodome.
Did you
Went to
really?
that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Saw it. Watched Warren play. It was amazing. It was amazing. Hayward Jeffries, Ernest Givens,
Hey,
uh, yeah, Frank Wycheck. Uh, it was amazing. That was like my first football game. I think I was in high school. I was in high school, but
when I was 5. The daycare center that I went to, they took us on a tour, a field trip of Texas Stadium,
yeah,
and they had arranged to have Herschel Walker and Danny White there,
yep,
and they took us on a tour of the whole place and the locker rooms, and we saw Staubach's locker and all that stuff, and then they took us all out on the field, right? And we got to play um, football with Danny White as all-time quarterback.
wow,
You're 5. Can you
yeah,
imagine how massive Texas Stadium
yeah,
was to some 5-year-olds running around in that football field playing with Danny
yeah,
White, Walker, and then a few years ago, I did an event with Byron, Mr.
yeah.
Byron. We did an event at South by Southwest, and one of the VIP guests was Herschel Walker. And I went,
Hmm.
I was like, "Yo, for one, let me see your muscle."
He's a big guy.
Fix that push-up gun for me. And then I don't know if you remember back in 1986, and I told him the story. He goes, "I do remember that." And I was like, I was one of those little boys, man. He was like, "Whoa!" It was such a cool moment because I'm a Cowboy fan. I don't follow sports. I don't know the stats. Don't try to promote me, recruit me to your fantasy football. I ain't trying to hear it.
Right.
My goals.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But I'm a Cowboys guy. I'm a Mavericks guy. I'm from Dallas.
Yeah.
That was a very surreal moment. Surreal.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a big dude. That's another big dude.
Massive.
I mean, barrel chested, everything, just still in tip top shape. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Huge.
he's
Like 4
he's
of them.
probably all of 270 right now, 265. He's a big guy.
We're doing 1,000 sit-ups a day and 1,000 sit-ups a day.
Yeah. And you know what? I think he's still involved with I think it was like health bars and shakes.
Uh-huh.
I think he has his own line, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I believe he does. Several years back, I watched him on TV talk about that. And that's kind of what I remember. I don't know if he's still doing it. And then I remember he fought in the UFC for a little bit.
He did. I didn't
Yeah.
even. What? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he beat the snot out of some poor fella. But yeah. Yeah, Herschel.
Done.
I mean, he's still in great shape. You know what I mean?
You know, I met Eddie
Yeah.
George a couple years ago. Eddie George is a really good dude, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's doing something really important, financial advising to pro athletes.
And see, I would love to do that. That was like one of my dreams in the very beginning. Because see, a lot of people don't know, Eddie George has a landscape architecture degree from Ohio State.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's got his own architecture firm, landscape architecture firm. Yeah, it's called Edge, Eddie George, in the name. So,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So Eddie's done some things, and a lot of people I guess didn't follow him afterwards, but after his career, he got straight into it. A lot of these, well, I shouldn't say a lot. Some of these ball players invest and do things in which you never hear about or expect or suspect. It's a small percentage that do it and do it right, but they do exist. Eddie George is one. Herschel Walker was one. Bo Jackson is one. Shaq, of course, that's another one that's doing it. I mean,
mogul, man. That dude's Magic Johnson. But
yeah. Oh my God. Magic is killing it. He's killing it.
Woo! If you want to follow up, come on, man.
But what was amazing is, and there's another basketball player named Junior. I forgot his last name. He used to play for the Mavericks. I forgot his name, but I just saw it the other day. Junior Williams or Junior, I forgot his name. But after he retired, he played for the Bucks, I think. I think he played for the Mavericks. Anyway, but after he retired, he was back in the 80s era. After he retired, he was working at a fast food restaurant. Now watch. If you saw this person and knew what they were doing before and you walked in and saw them, what was your first thought?
I have no idea.
I mean, if they were playing pro basketball and you saw them on TV,
I knew who he was.
Yes. And then you're like, why is he working in McDonald's?
Drugs?
You think either that or he mismanaged his money, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
Come to find out, he's one of the largest franchisee owners of ex-NBA players, and he was just learning the ropes. Yeah, exactly. Him, Marbury, or is it Mashburn? I think it's Marbury. That's another one who owns a whole bunch of franchises. Yeah, man. Some of the athletes, even Beast Mode, Lynch, Marshawn Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't touch any of his major money while he was playing.
Really?
He lived off of his basically like his salary. So any endorsement money, it just sat in the bank. I guess one of my dreams at the end of the day was to speak with those athletes about how they invest their money, what you do in the league, what you don't do in the league, how to find a way to, protect yourself from any type of bad investment, how to create an actual, I guess, a money machine. And what people don't understand is you don't have to be an A-list athlete to create a money-making machine.
Right.
All you have to do is get there, have a decent contract, and you got your seed capital to start something on your own. You just have to have the knowledge along with the seed capital. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, man. A lot of like now this is kind of different, but along those lines. Do you remember Samari Roll and Antrail Roll?
No, can't say that I do.
Okay. There were I think I know Samari was at Florida State as a cornerback, and he went pro. And then Trail came to the league, and I think he went to the Ravens, and he went pro. Anyway, he's like a doctor. He is a doctor right
Samari is?
now. Trail is a doctor.
The name Samari rings a bell, but I can't place it.
Yeah, he was a beast. He was
What
a
kind of
beast. I think brain, neuro.
neurosurgeon?
I think so. I believe so. But I know he is a doctor. I saw the coat, read up on him, saw his name embroidered, saw the tag. It's real.
Interesting.
I was like, wow. But I guess my point in saying all that is when guys get in the league, they're taught from infancy or right after infancy how to play ball. But they're never taught the financial side of winning if you make it.
Uh-huh.
That's the biggest that gets by the pro athlete.
Same with the music industry too. Same with the entertainment industry. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the main kind of founding principles of Recording Artists Guild. Whenever we started that back in the day, is we wanted to provide different tools and resources to artists to help them as people, because the label just sees you as a brand.
Right.
They don't teach you how to be smart with your money or all those types of things. So that was one of the resources that we provided for artists, was financial planning services.
Well, and speaking of your boy Roger Staubach,
Yeah.
when I say killed it, he killed it.
Crush.
You heard what he did.
Which part?
So
lots.
Okay. So back in the 70s, it was him, Randy White, Randy Hughes, a lot of the old school Cowboys. They weren't making a whole bunch of money when they were playing football. So in the off season, they would study real estate. That's what Staubach did.
Mm-hmm.
Study real estate, and as time went on, he started making small investments and growing his company. And I don't know if you remember, there was a Roger Staubach real estate company for a while.
Well, yeah, my dad's best friend, Scott Riddles, that I've been playing golf with since I was a kid, he was vice president of Staubach's real estate company for years out in California. Yeah.
Okay, so watch this. The architecture company I used to work for many years ago was hired by Brinker International. You know about those guys, right?
Yeah.
Brinker International, one of the chairs, I think it was VP or whatever, was Staubach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So recently, I say recently, over the past 10 years, his companies have grown so well, he sold it and made out like a bandit. Like a bandit. I mean,
imagine.
Oh my God. It was a if my recollection serves me correctly, if it serves me right, I think it was either close to or eclipsed 100
billion.
Yeah.
With
No,
a B?
mil.
Oh, million.
Mil.
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
No, not a B. Not a B.
Okay.
But considering that's not bad.
No.
That's not, he did all right. He did okay. So when I hear about some athletes that don't have the right people around them or don't have the right advisors around them, and I'm not saying I'm a financial guru per se,
mm-hmm.
but I've made some bad decisions, and that's how I learned to make the better decisions.
Right.
So it's like now, I read Think and Grow Rich. I read just about every single Robert T. Kiyosaki book. I read Jeffrey Gitomer. I'm reading Dennis Kimbrough. It's just all about increasing your specialized knowledge. First, you got to get the correct emotional headspace. Because
Yeah.
if you're all about bright and shiny,
EQ, emotional quotient. That's where it's at.
if you fall in love with the bright and shiny, you'll lose every time.
Yep.
I mean, when I talk to people about it, they're like, "What do you mean fall in love with the bright and shiny?" I'm like, every single young man that I know growing up has done this. When I'm about to say this analogy, the first car that they buy is the car they've always wanted or fell in love with. They end up upside down.
Mm-hmm.
That car eats them alive. Hopefully, they shook it off and learned from their mistake. I did it. And fortunately, it wasn't a car that kept me, under forever and a day. I had it for a few years, got rid of it. But I guess my point in that whole exact, that life experience was, I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
And I never did it again. I never did it again. So like, I had to tell myself when I read up on some things and got to talking to people, my uncle, people thought he was a country bumpkin in Alabama. I talked to him and we had a conversation and he said, "Nephew, I'm going to tell you something." I said, "What?" He said, "If you can't pay for it in one visit, in maximum 2 visits, you shouldn't even touch it." I was like, "What?" He said, 1 or 2 visits, hopefully the first one. If you can't pay it off that day, don't bother.
I like that.
I was like, "Really?" He said, "Trust me on this."
That's a great philosophy.
I said, "Okay." And he knew what he was saying. I heard what he said and I remembered it and I never forgot it. He's since passed away, but that guy he was on something, you know. And now as an adult, I reflect back on what he taught me, my dad taught me, a couple more of advisors that I knew were successful. Because like when I was coming up, all of my dad's close friends were multimillionaires. Every last one of them. They'd always come by the house, but I didn't know I was a kid, and he wasn't going to tell me, you know. So we just had conversations. I got to know them, shook their hand, we talked, and that was it. When I got older, I figured out, I was like, wait a minute, these guys, they did some things in their own personal life with this. And I said, I need to interview them, just like Napoleon Hill did.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I
25 years
interviewed,
he did.
I interviewed 3 or 4 guys, and now periodically I go back and I read their notes to make sure I'm following the script. And it works.
That's what's up.
So that's the best thing, man. Have your knowledge intact. Do not get emotional about your buys. Learn to actually make money while you're sleeping, or even if you fall asleep in death and still making money for your family. And don't be weighed down by past mistakes or hardships that you or we have encountered in our lifetime. It's going to happen. Just learn from it. Keep going. Grieve when possible, but don't let it take over. You know. So that's some of the best advice I can give, man.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing the wisdom, donating your time graciously with little old me and my little library desk over here. Got my essential oils cranking. I'm gotta keep my little space serene over here. But I appreciate it very much. You taking the time jumping on the phone and in the video chat and sharing some really good knowledge for the listeners now, the future listeners, and hopefully the listeners will pass on some of this to their kids in the future. Because that's what I wanted to show, man. I just want to share really cool perspectives and ways of overcoming obstacles and turning them into opportunities. Because, ultimately we're the ones creating our life, and more knowledge that we can have about that, and the better off we'll all be. Is what I've heard. So thanks, Skip.
Exactly it.
Is there any website thing that you want to?
Yeah, man. Go to
like that?
Go to Instagram. I'm under fellows_INK as an ink pen. On Facebook, I'm under Fellows Inc. of such person Eric Marcus, and we just right now it's straight design and build, man. We'll draw it and build it for anybody, but it's renovation, new construction, demo rehab. We don't care. And we do it not only just residential, but we do it commercial as well.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
And I will say, I've seen some of your design work firsthand, and it absolutely blew me away. That whole 1.2 million square foot facility that you had designed and created, and blew my mind, dude. So your services are what's up. So if any of you guys need those services, Dallas Fort Worth, right here.
Come see me. Come see me, man.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure, man. I appreciate you stopping by, saying what's up, everybody.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us on Getting Live with Lyndall Keith. Talk to you later.
Have a good one. All right, guys.